right. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for connecting. Today we are all for a treat because we're going to see the preview of a longer talk. But this is a talk that I kindly asked Xiaoqian to prepare for us, and I'm glad to see Anath is here with us also. Thank you, Anath, for joining, and thank to all of you. So all of us know and love our colleague, Dr. Jiang from the Department of Biomedical Informatics. So what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes, he's going to share with us his thoughts about FDA approval for AI medical devices. And then he has to leave, but we'll continue and he will review the questions and he will get back to you after that. But I said, even for 30 minutes, it will be great to hear his thoughts. So without further ado, good afternoon to everyone. And Xiaochuan, the virtual microphone is yours.
All right, thanks, Yanis, for inviting me. So actually, this was really inspired by our discussion in the last meeting of this AI group. We were thinking about what aspect will be practically unique for AI researchers in a biomedical world. So I was inspired by, sorry, my network may not be very stable. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear
we can
you.
still hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, my network has some issue today. So, so I'm going to talk about some FDA related AI medical device approval and its process. I think this topic may be interesting to many of us as we work with biomedical applications. And in recent years, FDA has actually loosened these requirements, make it easy and faster for artificial intelligence algorithm together with medical device to be approved. So before I get to the content, I'm showing you there's a very recent 2020 Nature Digital Medicine paper shows a total list of 29 FDA approved devices, as you can see, ranging from cardiology, oncology, and neurology. So many devices has been approved. A lot of them actually see deep learning automated algorithm, AI-based and physiological-based approaches. So the reason why I got interested was because when I first, as a graduate student, I was commented by a doctor, Dr. Mikhail Abramov. He is an ophthalmologist, but he writes code and he's one of the main developer of ImageJ. So I worked with him for 2 years as a graduate student. So we had a paper, was the best paper run up for ACMC graph and the top conference in computer graphics. So at that time, we were doing a retina segmentation and then vessel reconstruction, a number of interesting imaging tasks. In 2018, when I moved to the UT Health, and suddenly noticed there was a news report talking about the first FDA-approved AI device was made available, and I saw the name. It was my mentor, and it was like more than 10 years, over a decade of effort, finally gets his device approved. So it's so applaudable. So now he has a company actually selling these devices. You can use this device without a physician assist to get a diagnosis report for diagnosing retina disease for the diabetic patient within like 2 minutes without human intervention. So what's the criteria of approval? So this is actually obtained from the FDA approved website. They say this is a software program using artificial intelligence to analyze image of the eye taken with a retina camera. And then the image of sufficient quality through this software can provide the doctor with either one of these results: more than mild diabetic Hello? Hello?
I guess
We
we
can hear
lost
you
your
now.
slides.
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, Xiaochuan.
I have some issues, so I think I will ask Dawn to help me to drive the slides rather than doing it here. I'll stop my video.
Yeah, I'll share your slides. What number slide do you want me to start with?
Okay.
Don't start with number 2 or 3 and he will tell you to advance.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Sorry about this.
So Xiaoqian, tell Don where do you want to continue? What slide do you want next?
Yeah, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Wait, I think you're seeing them with delay. Wait for a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, the previous
de
slide.
novo. Okay.
Uh,
Basic story.
Maybe you want to say the title of the
sorry
slide that you want.
Okay, I'm going to go back one more.
Yeah.
Hang on one sec. IDX-DR, is that correct?
I think this is where we should start. Xiaoqian? Okay, the beauty of internet connections. Let's see if he's connected. Xiaoqian, are you still there?
No, he's in the waiting room. I'll let him in. He should be rejoining now.
Xiaoqian, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm using my mobile now. So is it better now? Can you hear me?
Much better. Thank you.
Oh, sorry about this. So I was talking about the two of the functionality the AI device was providing. The first one is to provide mild diabetic retinopathy detection and refer to eye professional. Otherwise, it will generate a negative result. So a very simple function. Next slide, please. So essentially, if you look at the criteria, FDA has evaluated on clinical study 900 patients with diabetic from 10 primary sites to evaluate this device. So out of their evaluation, they achieved a sensitivity of like 87.4 and a specificity of 89.5. And it was determined as a breakthrough device, which represents a new technology that has no previous approval clear alternative. So the device offers significant advantage over existing approved or alternatives. And this was therefore granted the approval from NIH as the first AI integrated medical device. Next slide. So what's the process of FDA approval? So this is a graph that was provided from the FDA website. So essentially there are several steps, but in the next slide, I will later show you there are actually some simplifications. But from the traditional way, the FDA will go through a pre-approval process, which has a standard fee about 90K or 20K, depending on the application. Then FDA will check whether there are existing active submission of this type. If not, then we'll go to the next phase. In the next phase, there will be several determination, determining whether this device cleared through this de novo process using 510K submission. So 5110 submission essentially is a pre-market submission made to FDA to demonstrate this device is to be marked as safe and effective. So in this phase, they will also decide whether this device has any patient safety risks. So it will be classified into class 1, 2, or 3. If it is class 3, then we'll go through another route, and then you will be required for pre-market approval application. Otherwise, if it falls into class 1 or 2, then you will go to the next phase of review. And the FDA will ask for substantial material to validate this algorithm and device and decide whether this device can be moved to the next phase for approval. Next slide, please. So essentially, looks like a complicated process, but there was an update in 2019 So allowing actually the applicants to skip the 510K request as well as the not substantially equivalent determination NSE status. So if the vendor or the innovator decided or think this device has no competitors and has not been proposed early on, they can directly submit for the de novo request for class 1 or 2 evaluation. Then FDA will make determination to see whether this falls into class 1 or 2. Otherwise, if it's in class 3, then you will go through the pre-market approval process. Because of this simplification, actually the de novo process becomes more efficient. Indeed, like if you look at what are the class 1, 2, and 3, you will see, I give some examples. For example, like bandage, examination glove, mechanical wheelchair, those are low risk devices in class 1. The medium risk devices are infusion pump, blood pressure kits, and then the high risk ones are like a pacemaker, dental laser, heart valves, and those kind of things. So I believe like IDX was going through class 2, received the approval. So it's determined as a medium risk device. Next one. I also find there are some statistics about the average time of approval. What I can find is the average time from the submission to approval to up to 2016, and then success rate afterwards. So you can see like the time of approval actually is significant decreasing over the years. Right now it's about like in 2016 it's about 100 days, and the success rate is pretty high. In 2020 it's like 60%, and the projected success rate in 2022 will be 70%. So you can see also in the different steps how much time you are expected to wait. So essentially, I think according to this chart, this is an older chart, so it's about 120 days. Next slide. So essentially, this is a very short presentation, so only a few slides. I just want to give you like an overview about this novel opportunity for de novo clearance from FDA for AI integrated medical device. And I think there's a lot of aspects we can look at, especially if you are interested in certain domain areas. There's this Nature Scientific paper, which includes a number of approvable device. So you can look at how the judgment criteria and how long it takes for each of these categories to get approval. Many of these are imaging based, I would say. Seems like deep learning, machine learning has been quite successful in handling like imaging. But I believe like since FDA now is aware of the unique advantage of machine learning, there will be new opportunities for other algorithms and other machine learning algorithms to move forward. So any questions?
Thank you, Xiaoqian. I appreciate your presentation. It's good that we have it in a panel form right now. I'll ask you to please jump in and ask your questions. Xiaoqian will be with us only until 1:30, but we are welcome to stay longer, and I promise that I'll give him the questions. So please grab the virtual microphone and talk if you have questions. If not, then I'll ask my friend Anna some questions. Anybody? Somebody?
So
Okay,
I
Anna.
have,
go ahead.
yeah, I do have a question though. Maybe I misunderstood what you were saying, Xiaoqian, but typically the 510K does not require approval by the agency. 510K is submitted and it's predicated on some pre-existing device. So obviously, if this is the first of its kind, then you can't do a 510K. You have to do a de novo application. I believe it's called a PMA application or something like that.
PMA, right? Pre-market approval.
Pre-market approval, right? But the 510K you use a 510K if there is some similar device already out there, which is already marketed, and you're saying that your device is going to perform equivalently to that. Right? And then all the FDA is evaluating is if the performance is indeed equivalent. So were you suggesting then that the 510K would be a pathway for new AIs enabled devices that people are developing now?
No, I think my interpretation is if you decide this is completely novel and then there's no alternative device, then you can skip 510K. According to the revision in 2019, you just go for the de novo application. So previously, I think you are asked to submit 510K, even if that's empty, you have to submit it. So the process is expedited. And then you don't need to provide like a non-competitive statement NCE as well in the new route. Yeah, so it's just an accelerated process.
I see. Okay.
So, Devika?
Thank you. Thank you, Xiaoqian, for the lovely presentation. I had no idea what the process was, so thanks for elucidating that. I have two questions. Question one is, you said this diabetic retinopathy detector is, qualified under the de novo. Now,
right.
But Google has a detector, right? Is this the same thing, a different thing?
No, I think it's a different thing. This is a patent and spin off from University of Iowa, where Dr. Abramov is. I don't see Google's device is listed in this 29 FDA approved table yet. So I think this IDX is the first, and then Google may have an alternative, but maybe afterward.
Ah, okay. No, because there was an FDA trial that was run in multiple hospitals across the US. After they, made the big splash with their diabetic retinopathy with the Kaiser Permanente data. So I had assumed, therefore, that the FDA, it was being run at these different hospitals because they were on course for a FDA approval. So can you go a little bit below the surface there and say, if, say, you do a de novo like your mentor, Dr. Abramov, did, when the FDA accepts that de novo application, what do they do? Do they get a committee of experts to say this is okay, or do they force you to do a clinical trial? I mean, like, what is the basis for making their recommendation?
Well, so I don't know the details. I actually invited Dr. Abramov to give a talk, but he was so busy and I couldn't hold on to him. But what I learned is like after they accepted the initial application, FDA asked them to provide more evidence. That's where they evaluated on this 900 patient from like a couple of about 10 institutions. And that evidence convinced FDA that the device is effective and then can be used without human supervision.
So this is an internal FDA panel that makes that recommendation. It's not like an NIH study section where they get all the academics to come and weigh in, right? So something like that.
No. All FDA panels have external advisory groups.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, they definitely invite external people to join, but like this is a pretty expedited process. So I think after they submitted the new evidence, then FDA make a judgment with the external committee. And then you probably have more information on how this process works, right?
No. It's just that you opened up a whole bunch of questions for me, so I have no idea. This is
no. I think Anand has a lot of experience with this.
Anand has, so maybe he can share some.
Yeah. So maybe you can share some thoughts. I'm assembling a lot of information from what I can see from the internet, essentially, because if I can have Dr. Abramov talk about this, then a lot of details in the devil, I bet.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, Devika, the way Google's algorithm worked was they were analyzing existing retinal maps.
Yes.
And they were training on existing data as well as and then doing the usual train, validate, test,
Right.
breakout of existing data.
Yeah.
The IDX device is a device that acquires the image directly.
Right.
So it is not given an input. It actually gets the input autonomously.
Yeah. It's actually a retinal imager.
Right. Got it.
Right.
And it's that image that it is classifying. And I don't know if there are specific image attributes that it is optimized for.
Okay. Likely, very likely it is.
Yeah.
For diabetic retinopathy.
Yeah. But essentially, it's just train the CNN model embedded into this device for classification.
Yeah. I can see why this succeeded, because I think the key, as Anant points out, is that they acquire the image themselves, whereas the Google protocol relied on diabetic, retinal images. So they were much broader. They said, give me any image and I'll do the job.
Right.
One controls that. So there must be some set of conditions under which that image is taken. So there's some standardization.
It's much tighter, right?
Yeah,
What these guys have been able to do.
Right.
So that's good. I mean, that actually makes for then the claims of specificity and sensitivity make a lot of sense. I can see how that can be achieved.
Right.
Under controlled conditions. Yeah, absolutely.
Under controlled conditions. So it was approved for a narrowed condition.
Yeah.
And let me ask those who have questions to unmute yourselves, and then I'll know that you have a question. Go ahead, Anna.
No, I think the smart thing that IDX did was they realized that if they were only selling the software,
it won't go.
then they would only sell to people who already had the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the big value of the software is it does not require human interpretation.
Yes.
So you are now able to place this device in locations where there was no device before because there was no access to human interpreters before.
Right.
So let me be facetious and start from the beginning, since there are no other questions. And Anna, what is FDA? What does it control, and why do we need to have FDA approval of our machine learning algorithms?
So FDA regulates anything that is used for healthcare.
Uh-huh.
And you can classify what is used for healthcare. Well, the FDA is authorized under something called the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. So in principle, they oversee the entire food supply chain as well as the cosmetic supply chain, but the vast majority of what they do is actually the drug space.
Right.
Why do you need it? There's a long history of this, but what the FDA primarily does is demonstrate that products are both safe and verify that they're efficacious.
Right.
And they control the development process for any new product, ensuring that the experimental product is safe before it goes into human testing, and then confirming that it is efficacious in human testing. That's
Wonderful. So now I have a machine learning algorithm, and then what's the order of events? Am I going to have development, clinical trials, FDA? Can you enlighten us a little bit on this, Anna?
Well, so the way I understand it is the question really is, does your machine learning algorithm impact the delivery of healthcare in any fashion? So it could be used for diagnosis. It could be used for clinical decision support. Either of those, right? If there's an intervention involved, then it could be used to inform the intervention, or it could be used for diagnosis. effectively, so that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, does this product enter the body, or does the product do whatever it's doing entirely outside the body?
Right, right. That determines the safety. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it enters the body and it has a pharmacological effect, in that it perturbs the metabolism and physiology at the molecular level, then it becomes regulated by the drug division, because it's a drug. And if it doesn't do that significantly, then it's a device and it's regulated by the device division. And if it goes into the drug division, then the series of regulatory stages you have to pass are investigational new drug, and then a new drug application, IND, NDA. And if it goes down the device pathway, then it can either be, if it's a very low, if it's a low index device, something like, like a stethoscope or a tongue depressor,
right?
Then you don't even need an approval of any kind from the FDA. These are historical, long-standing devices. You do what's called a pre-market notification, PMN, where you simply inform the agency that you are going to market this device, and it's up to them to come back and tell you that you cannot do it. And if they don't say anything, then you can go ahead and market it. And then there are the ones that require approvals, which are the 510K and the PMA. And the 510K is if the device that you're intending to produce and market is the equivalent of something that's already marketed. So for example, I'm talking to a manufacturer right now of a new MRI instrument. And they will be submitting a 510K because there's a ton of MRIs already out there and marketed, and all they're trying to show is that their instrument performs as well.
Right.
And then something like this IDX device, or a friend of mine is working on this thing that he calls a tumor monorail. It's essentially a functionalized tube that you stick into a tumor, and there are chemoattractants on the tube that force the tumor to grow along the tube and not outwards into the body. So, so this is another device that received a breakthrough device designation, and he'll be going after a PMA at some point, or his company will be going after a PMA at some point. Okay.
Is that also going through this de novo process, or this is another route?
Yeah, so it's a de novo process because there's no predicate device.
Right, right.
But if a predicate device exists, then it goes down the 510K path.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's at a high level, that's basically what it is.
Right. So for the MRI device, they probably will not go to the de novo, right? Because those devices
not unless there's something unique and different about that particular MRI.
Right, right.
And in that case, they may have to go down the de novo device. For example, I'm not exactly sure, but let's say you're the first manufacturer of a 19.6 Tesla MRI instrument, whereas everything that is out there right now that is approved for clinical use is 7 Tesla or below. Right. So because this is ultra high field, it may have to go in as a de novo device because there's absolutely no evidence of what happens under those conditions.
Right, 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 right.
So without wanting to be facetious, let's say I develop a machine learning algorithm for something that exists in this Nature article. Disclosure, I have not read the article. Let's say that I have developed a machine learning algorithm for artifact reduction of MRI images, and there exists already an algorithm. What is the pathway, if you know, of course?
So
This is not staged, guys. This is real questions to a person that doesn't know what's the next question.
so this is, let's think this through. So it's an AI algorithm for artifact reduction in
MRI images.
MRI images. And are you thinking this will be applied during acquisition or post-acquisition?
Post-acquisition.
So it's an image processing thing.
Indeed.
Yeah. My gut is it will. So there are a number of artifact reduction algorithms out there already.
Yes.
And they range from simple smoothing to subsampling of k-space and so on. So my gut is that it will be a 510K application, and you'll have to show that it performs no worse than something that's out there already.
So how can I prove this? Is it going to be exactly the same images? When we talk baseline in papers, we say, okay.
So there's any number, yeah. So that's one, or you can do a cohort, and then you can have if it's a question of artifact reduction, that you're not doing any interpretation of the image, which means there's still a human interpreter. So you'll have a panel of readers that read both sets of images and render a score of some kind, and then you'll look for equivalence of the scores.
Okay. So go ahead, Devika.
So in the particular case you're talking about, Yanni, it might be a more fruitful approach to go via the instrument maker and offer your algorithm coded as an FPGA for them to add it sort of at the end of their processing chain.
Yeah, but that's no difference. They'll still have to go through the same regulatory process.
No, they do. But they have done this process before. I'm just saying, if you are an academic in a lab, you've come up with a brilliant idea, that the faster way to get there. I'm not saying it's an alternate. In fact, you're shuffling off all the bureaucratic runaround, gathering the baselines, etc., to the equipment manufacturer. And then every time that equipment is sold, you get royalties on the use of your algorithm. So
I was
another
not
mechanism
of the logistics. I was asking in terms of,
yeah,
a company has this challenge. Let me be
yeah. Then the company would have to do exactly what. But I was just thinking of you, Yanni, as an academic, and I'm saying, no, I don't want you to do all this.
No, I don't have such a. We're trying to inform our colleagues what needs to be done, basically.
Yeah, got it.
I mean, in my opinion, there are relatively few situations, very, very few situations where, as an academic, part of an academic institution, and solely as an academic institution, that you will want to go down the path of an FDA filing for marketing purposes. And the reason for that is very simple. FDA does not regulate platforms. They do not regulate mechanisms. They do not regulate algorithms. They regulate products.
Yes.
That's a fundamental issue. So if what you're doing is developing something that you will use yourself, they actually don't care, and they have no jurisdiction. Even if it is a medical device that you will be putting into patients, or a drug that you will be putting into patients, FDA doesn't care because they only, so technically they only regulate something called interstate commerce. So,
can you repeat that? What's that?
interstate commerce.
Interstate commerce.
Yeah. So if whatever you're making, you are going to sell across state lines, then the Federal Food and Drug Administration cares. Within the state, if you are selling it at the state level, there may be some organization that gets involved. But if what you're making and using stays completely within your organization, it's actually not regulated. You may get sued for malpractice. Okay, that's a different story. But there's no regulation stopping it. So, for example, my lab produces all the nasopharyngeal swabs that TCH uses. We can't buy them anymore. They're not commercially available. So we're making them. So we've delivered 35,000 of them so far. Okay. And we have clearance from our legal, from compliance, from TDSHS, and FDA consultants who have told us, yeah, there's no regulation. You're free to use it.
Having said that, Anand, I think if I look around the virtual room, I see people that are involved in academics. What academics should know about the FDA process?
Well, so there's one place where you will actually spend as an academic, you'll spend a lot of time working with the FDA, and that is with what is called an investigator-sponsored IND.
Investigator-sponsored what?
IND, investigational new drug that is sponsored by an investigator, as opposed to by. So an IND is effectively it's permission to test a drug in humans. Okay. Well, it gives you permission to ship drug to the test site, but because once it gets to the test site is free to do whatever they want with it.
Right.
So those are typically applied for, and approval is given to a commercial entity. But there is also a class of INDs that are called investigator-sponsored INDs, which are not driven by a commercial entity, but are driven by an individual investigator who wants to test a new material in a clinical trial, but there's no commercial sponsor who is pushing. Most often this happens for a drug that is already approved and is on the market, and now you want to test it for a new indication. That's when you will have to file an IND, an investigator IND, and then you also have to get approval from your IRB and whatnot. But that's probably the situation where, as an academic, you'll end up interacting the most with the FDA.
Okay, so now I'm a company. I'm in the business of developing a machine algorithm for diabetic retinopathy. And I have to convince the FDA that I'm doing better than Dr. Abramov's algorithm or whatever. Doesn't matter.
No, you don't have to convince the FDA that you're doing better than Dr. Abramov's. The FDA is not in that business.
Okay, what do I have to do if I have a comparable algorithm already existing?
So the first thing you have to do is show that whatever your algorithm does is safe for human health. In other words, it's not going to make mistakes that are potentially going to compromise safety. Okay. Second, you need to set up some criterion for what your algorithm will do, and then you need to do the tests to show that your algorithm does actually accomplish that. And If the FDA believes that you have shown that, then they will, in principle, approve it. But it's up to you to demonstrate that you have a marketing advantage and you can actually sell it over Dr. Abramov's.
Of course,
right? So if you set your bar too low and you go through the headache of running the clinical trial and you get approval, you'll never sell anything because no one's going to want to buy it because it's not performing better than the competing product.
Sorry, just to thank Dr. Xiaoqian Jiang. He is leaving us as announced. I'm glad he stayed with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Xiaoqian.
Thank you. I'll catch up.
Thank you. So, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Anand?
No, that was basically it.
Actually, I just want to say we had 2 new people, but I think we just lost Chris Amos. I invited Chris Amos from Baylor College of Medicine and Patrick Ford, also from Baylor College of Medicine, to join our group and listen to what we have to say. So I see Patrick there. He's a nuclear medicine specialist. So maybe Patrick, you can introduce yourself to the group here if you're here. Yes, I see you're here. You can unmute yourself, Patrick.
Maybe on clinical service and watching on the sides.
Oh, that could be. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Well, actually, I'm on clinical service, but I'm watching you while I'm doing my work.
Okay, that's what Anand guessed, actually. Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Patrick.
My pleasure.
Okay, so thank you, Anna, for all the clarification. Do we have any other questions that you want me to send to Xiaoqian? Anybody who wants to introduce himself, unmute yourself, turn on your camera, or just unmute yourself and speak. This is an open microphone time, in a sense. Okay, so I don't see any open microphones. In that respect, I want to thank your time, give you back 15 minutes of your day. And next month, we'll have another webinar from our group. And feel free to email me or Anand or Devika topics that you would like to see discussed. And if you noticed, sometimes we'll have experts on these topics, or sometimes we will do a literature review and try to bring you the information. So we have the wisdom of the crowd, in a sense, rather than the experts like Dr. Abraham, who's not able to join us this time. So this becomes a monthly event now, and we need your help to tell us what topics you would like to cover. And if you have a speaker in mind, feel free, we'll invite them. And the good thing is it doesn't cost anything to invite, but they're our, in a sense. We don't have travel expenses, in a sense. So feel free to email us with suggestions of topics, suggestions of speakers, and do watch out for the next invitation from Dawn and Shannon about the next webinar. So thank you all for joining today, as Anath mentioned, and from Devika and Anath. Devika, any parting words?
No, thank you for for coming, and keep those ideas coming to us. Email any one of us, and I'd like this to be a forum where we explore new collaborations, new ideas, new things that you have learned you're willing to share with us. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Devika. And closing thoughts from Anath, and then we'll close the event. Oh, Cesar has a question. I'm sorry, Cesar.
Yeah, sorry. Now that we are saying our goodbyes, I just wanted to share that the EC department at Rice is organizing a seminar on March 9th. So that is going to be in 1 week from now at 12. And it's going to be Professor Michaela van der Schaar from Cambridge. talking about medicine and machine learning. So I guess this is something that we might all be interested in attending.
Oh,
so
can you circulate that
yes,
notice so that we can
who
get
should
out
I
to all
send
of
the information to share it with everybody?
So I think if you send it to Ananth or me or Devika, we'll send it to Don and Shannon, and they will circulate it to all the regular attendees for their information, to the mailing list of the cluster.
Got it. I'll do that.
If you have Don's or Shannon's, directly to them, otherwise to any of us, and we'll get it to them.
Okay.
And this is the kind of information that will be nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's anytime you come across anything that might be interesting to this group, just forward it to us. Or
Got it.
Make sure to copy Suzanne as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And hopefully this will be also on the GCC updates that we receive in terms of future events. So the faster you notify GCC, the better it will be for everyone. And of course, we'll have the general email, but we hope to have a targeted email for this email list. And if you're not interested or you cannot make it, you just hit delete. That's my attitude. So we'll try to minimize it, of course, but so Anand, last words.
no, I'm glad we had a good group for this discussion, and looking forward to the next one.
Okay, so looking forward to everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us today. And we'll change the format so you don't have to register for the future events, but we will have the ability to communicate information to you even without registration. We want to make it easy, low bar for you to attend these events. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.